And so this again is just a real quick overview. I'm sure if you guys with the BNRC want to know more about Silverbow Creek, Greg Mullen is here tonight. He would be happy to come in. Joel Chavez and Dory with the Greenway Service District. All of these guys could give a great talk on Silverbow Creek. In fact, you can take a look at this. This is several years old, but it still has some good photos in it. So 1998, there was a settlement, first of the settlements of the state of Montana versus ARCO, and $86 million was put into the Silverbow Creek account. And that included both the remediation and the restoration. And so I'll take a quick, do you guys with the BNRC feel comfortable that you understand the difference between remediation and restoration? Okay, so that's a combination of it. And actually, 98 and 99, the first work started on Silverbow Creek, and it wasn't part of the $86 million project, but EPA ordered ARCO under the lower area 1 or LAO cleanup, which included the Colorado smelter and tailings ponds and the Butte reduction works. That's that first section of Silverbow Creek before you get to the interstate overpasses and before the sewage treatment plant dumps its effluent in. And we'll see a photo of that work here in a few slides too. They removed almost 2 million cubic yards just in that one about 100 acre area, and they're actually still removing materials out of there. I haven't been as up to speed on the BIPSU as I once was, but they're still down there doing removals, and the consent decree, which is the final step in the priority soils, still isn't done yet, so there's going to be additional work done there as well. The work with the DEQ and the NRD began in 1999. $75 million has been spent to date on the remediation and restoration, with an additional $8 million from the Greenway Service District, which includes a lot of extra plantings and the trail that's down there. This is, I like the way you put this, Carol, the power of interest, and the fact that these guys have been doing an excellent job with the way they spend the money as they go downstream. There's, because of the interest and the way they've been spending the money, there's roughly $65 million left in the Silverbow Creek Fund, and that's what you'll hear, this Silverbow Creek Reserve Fund, which there's been a lot of talk about it around here in Butte. That's what's in it now. That's certainly not what's going to be in it when they finish it, but it's quite a chunk of change. Now this is that first section that wasn't part of the $86 million. This is that area that, if you go way back to where you saw Silverbow Creek channeled with the Colorado smelter in the background, this is the tailings impoundment of the Colorado smelter, and you could probably kind of see where Silverbow Creek might have originally flown through that crap. But this is where Silverbow Creek used to be before they started this project in 1998 and completed it in 1999. And what they did was they hauled a couple million cubic yards of sediments out of there, and you can see here's where Silverbow Creek is now, in this nice restored floodplain. And what these areas are is, you guys have heard of the treatment lagoons. That's where they are currently pumping and treating the groundwater that comes from the Metro storm drain and any other groundwater that comes out of Butte that doesn't go into the Berkeley pit, I guess would be the easiest way to put it. And so this new channel is actually constructed above this contaminated groundwater that's being treated here. And there are trout in this. In fact, there's quite a few trout in this section. And the old place when Silverbow Creek used to have water in it and Blacktail Creek came together, it's just east of Montana Street. So this is just downstream of where that confluence took place, and so this would have been Silverbow Creek, and there are fish in there as a result of the cleanup work that has removed all of those tailings. And they did it a little different there. They remove, you know, the vast majority of the wastes in the Silverbow Creek project that's been led by the DEQ and the Natural Resource Damage Program. Under the remedy at the Colorado tailings, they picked this. I mean, it was sort of, it was pseudoscience, I guess, might be the best way to put it. They just agreed they would excavate down to a 11-foot depth contour. If they ended up taking out more material, great. If they left tailings beneath that, great. And so they removed most of it, but there was things left in place. And there's a lot of other tailings left in place. Again, when we get back to that relative restoration, how far back are we going to restore things? But these are things that can be considered. There's about 1 million cubic yards of these tailings that the Metro Sewage Treatment Plant is built on top of. They're always going to load the groundwater as long as that's there, as long as those wastes are there. And then those real historic slag walls that have kind of become, you know, this part of historic Butte. When you drive by Lower Montana Street, you see those big, tall, black walls. For you young ones who might not know what the slag walls are, there's another very significant amount of tailings underneath those slag walls too, that as long as those stay there are going to continue to contaminate the groundwater. This is a good look at just kind of trying to simplify what's going on in Silverbow Creek. If I really wanted to be simple, all I can tell you they're doing is they're removing the floodplain and rebuilding every linear foot of Silverbow Creek between Butte and the Warm Springs ponds, but it's not quite that simple. This is the first stages, and these photos are from the early stages of Silverbow Creek within that first 5 miles about, maybe a little below 5 miles, right in the Ramsey area here. First, you gotta, you know, you're getting these, in order to tear out an entire floodplain, you got to get some big pieces of equipment in there, and if you want to be able to work with pieces of equipment, you got to get rid of the groundwater. So they start dewatering it. You can see the pumps and the hoses here, and they divert the stream away from where they're working. The tailings removal, like Greg said, in some places it was as deep as 15 feet. In other places it was as shallow as 6 inches or a foot as you get down closer to Warm Springs. But where all of that stuff is going is the first mile reach, they actually put it in some repositories that were up high and dry out of the floodplain and capped it with local material. They decided quickly that because of a rock diversion ditch that had to stay in place for a long time until the vegetation in the stream would mature, that was, and the fact that you actually are leaving waste within the upper watershed just wasn't a good idea, or not as good of an idea as putting it on a train and hauling it down to Opportunity, where there's already 160 million cubic yards of material, which could be a whole other talk. Yep, and there's that waste train that Cat Stevens sings about. And this is a aerial photograph of the Opportunity ponds. Now that looks a lot different now, I bet, if there was a new aerial photograph, because the last time I was out there I was kind of disappointed because there wasn't any bare tailings left. It was a good place where you could just go out there and say, wow, there's a lot of waste that goes into creating 29 billion pounds of copper. But it's all been capped with Milltown sediment, so it's more this color now, but there's nothing growing on it yet. Then you got to rebuild the streams. So this is where the habitat, trout habitat, comes in. You know, they're building a couple of different lifts of stream bank in here, as well as, you know, riffles, pools, runs. And then, yeah, this is the confluence of where, this is Brown Sculch Creek, and this is Silverbow Creek. Joe, I think, has a station right in that area here. And then the big part is the revegetation. And if you want to talk about, this is not like just reseeding a part of your lawn that doesn't grow, or reclaiming one acre dump on the Butte Hill. This is 1,500 acres, or is it 1,200 acres between Butte and Warren Springs. I mean, it's a massive project, and there's also about 4 different seeding zones within the floodplain, ranging from the wettest to the driest. So first you gotta find a lot of material to fill this area in, and Butte is not a agricultural community. That's why we're the mining city, and so they're actually building a topsoil where they got clean material, has no weed seeds in it, no elevated levels of metal, but it also has no organic material in it because it's mineralized and it comes from deep, and it's volcanic in the area where they've been getting it from. So you actually have to bring in the clean material, and then you have to add organic amendment to the top few inches so you can get things to grow. And that's what's being done in this picture here. You can see how these areas haven't been amended, where this is the compost. And then you have to seed it. And this is, I just don't understand how you could look at a map or even know where to begin, but I think they got one of the best guys in the business developing the revegetation for this floodplain, and you go out there and walk it and you'll probably agree, but it's all based on soil hydrology. How deep is it to groundwater, or how often is the soil wet in the root zone? And there's, like I said, 4 different seed mixes, as well as tens of thousands of plants that are planted out there every year, from both layers of the stream bank back in these near areas and also in wetland areas. Very impressive project. These are getting a little outdated, but this is the before, during, and after photos of the first reach of Silverbow Creek. Before, you can see the big dead patches in here. Much going on except for that nice algae growth in the stream. During, and this is 4 years after, and now, it's been 11 years since they did the first mile of Silverbow Creek, so it's looking pretty good. 80% of it is done. 80% of the tailings have been removed at this point. There's about 8 miles left of the stream, and that includes the couple miles that are in the Durant Canyon where they're working right now, and then or 4 miles in the canyon, and then 4 miles down below in what they call sub-area 4 as it goes into the Opportunity, or the Warm Springs Ponds near Opportunity. They're projecting the project to be completed, save for maintenance and weed control, in 2014. 2013 is when they'll be done removing the tailings. 2014 is when they'll be done with the final revegetation efforts. They're taking what was an original 22-mile section of stream, and with all the new meanders and habitat that they've built into it, it'll be now 30 miles. And I would say, I can't say without a shadow of a doubt that all of it is publicly owned, but almost all of it is publicly owned. And so that's what you guys are, you younger folks in the crowd tonight, are going to be left with, is a 30-mile publicly owned stream and floodplain. There are not very many places where you have an entire 30-mile section of stream that is owned by the public, and at least not outside of national parks or national wildlife refuges. So again, something to pay attention to as far as what you have as a resource here. There is other work that has benefited Silverbow Creek as a result of the lawsuit settlement with that NRD is in charge of, as well as other things that have been going on. Metro Sewer Plant, although it still remains probably the biggest problem outside of Superfund as far as the recovery of Silverbow Creek as a fishery, has made some upgrades recently. They put in a UV sterilization step, and they have a plan, I believe, of how to do their final step of nutrient reduction to get that stream down to where it should be in terms of nitrogen and phosphorus. I know they're still doing stormwater sampling and management. there was stormwater. There's going to be a stormwater ordinance passed here in Butte within the next 6 months that is going to hopefully go a long ways to tracking problem areas within the urban area of Butte, as well as the additional work that needs to be done under Superfund once the consent decree is signed for the Butte Hill. There's been a lot of tributary work. German Gulch has had a 3-phase restoration project on it. It's the probably the most important tributary to Silverbow Creek. It's got a real good west slope cutthroat population in it. There's been a lot of work, assessment work and on the ground work done in Browns Gulch, which is another pretty significant tributary down in the Ramsey area. And there's been a lot of restoration planning, first one being this Silverbow Creek restoration plan. And then I know the Conservation District here, Mile High Conservation District, just funded a Blacktail Creek restoration prioritization plan just a couple of years ago for the lower sections of Blacktail Creek. And then there's also been some prioritization of additional work that can be done on the tributaries, and Jason and his colleagues with FWP have done one heck of a task over the last few years, compiling and sampling and compiling data from pretty much every tributary in the upper Clark Fork River for fishery values, and trying to prioritize which ones should be restored first. And so they developed an evaluation process based on how to prioritize this, and it's restoring the main stem fisheries, replacing lost trout angling in the main stems, and maintaining or improving native fish populations. And they ranked every one of the stream sections or streams that they categorized. There were different reaches within some streams, and the report was out for public comment. And you guys are probably pretty close to doing another presentation of the response to comments here, right? All right. Anything you want to add on that? This report, this is what it looks like. And what table? Copies of that report in the back. All right. So let's talk about what fish are in Silverbow Creek now. Jason does an annual electrofishing count, and you know, I'm not sure if you guys have gotten brown trout, but these are the ones that have turned up. Rainbow trout, brook trout, which are introduced trout species in this area. And then we got a central mud minnow, which is an introduced forage fish, and sculpin and long-nosed sucker, which are also native non-game fish, and the west slope cutthroat, which if you read what the Silverbow Creek restoration vision plan was, is one of the visions for Silverbow Creek once it was restored was to have a self-sustaining west slope cutthroat fishery, and there are some west slope cutthroats showing up in this stream. This is where I kind of get into the anecdotal information. I being a fisherman, and being a fisherman that grew up learning to fish on Silverbow Creek headwater streams, and one who doesn't like to venture too far from home with my fly rod if I don't have to, pay real close attention to the electroshocking data that I'm privy to with my job with FWP. It's one of the perks. But I was surprised when that first west slope cutthroat, the brook trout have been found here and there on and off for the last several years, but then they found a pretty good sized west slope cutthroat in, was it 2008, the fall of 2008? And I'm starting to think to myself, well, they've been shocking trout every year in here, and granted it, you know, as far as anyone else most people in Butte are concerned, it is still shit creek, but that might mean it, if there are some fish in there with the turds, it might be worth going down because I won't have to share the creek with anybody. And so finally in February of 2009, I was bored on a Sunday and said, you know what, I got nothing else to do. I'm going to go down to the creek. And I brought my fly rod down there. Unfortunately, I did not have a camera the first time I went out. This is from my second time out, but I fished down in one of the new restored sections there by Ramsey, and I was out there for a couple hours and hadn't had a bite, and then all of a sudden I felt the tug on my line and figured I just snagged some of the coir fabric on one of the new banks, but then it kept tugging back and couldn't believe it. Reeled it in, and it was about a 16-inch brook trout, which is pretty good sized brook trout if you do much fishing. And so I took a few more casts in the same run and caught a 17-inch brook trout. And that was all I caught that day, but needless to say, I've been going back and fishing other areas for the last 2.5 years and kind of even developed my own little angling research project to kind of test out other more scientific data that's been collected on the stream, which leads us to talking about some of the problems that are left to it. But I will say that another anecdotal thing I've noticed is the first year I was out there, 2009, I was catching mostly brook trout. Starting towards the end of 2009 and all last year, I've been catching mostly West Slope cutthroats. And I don't know what that is other than the fact that there must be more cutthroats coming in from German Gulch. And I've even got my son into the game now, and he loves fishing on Silverbow Creek. This is was an 18.5-inch cutthroat that he caught right down near Miles Crossing, which is the newest restoration on Silverbow Creek. And so don't let the secret get too far out, but Butte folks should enjoy a local fishery for the first time in 100 years. And that's exactly the reason why Jason and FWP have proposed some, for the first time in the history of fishing regulations in Montana, Silverbow Creek will have a fishing regulation in 2012. It's going to be catch and release for West Slope cutthroat trout on Silverbow Creek and all of its tributaries from the general fishing season, which is the third Saturday in May through November 30th. Your catch limits on all the other fish are going to apply. And then there's going to be an extended, because it is our only fishing resource here in Butte and Silverbow County, it's also going to have an extended catch and release artificial lures only season, December 1st through the beginning of the general season. So that's good news. The bad news that's left is I said there isn't a drop of water left in Silverbow Creek that actually is Silverbow Creek. It's all Blacktail Creek until you get to this point, which is about 3/4 of a mile downstream from the old historic confluence of where Silverbow Creek and Blacktail Creek used to come together. Then the flow doubles, and the other half of Silverbow Creek, most times of the year, is the treated sewage effluent from where our toilet water and all that other good stuff goes in Butte. And again, it's a big project. I believe over $20 million, but the plan is on the table, and they are taking some of the more affordable steps. But a lot of the data that's been collected on some additional projects, which I think is going to lead right into what Joe talks about, is that there's this roughly 5-mile dead zone that starts right here and goes 5 miles downstream. And then there's another group of researchers who have been looking at macroinvertebrates for the last 19 years, and they've slowly seen the macroinvertebrate at the 10 stations that they have been monitoring for that amount of time improve to the point where I go to their presentations every year. This last August, I heard them say for the first time that nutrients are becoming as big of an impact on the macroinvertebrate sampling populations they sample as metals in the Clark Fork River. So it really points to the need for us to consider what we can do to fix these nutrients that are still coming out of our outdated sewage system. I guess this is what I was going to close it. And if it can make every kid in Butte smile like that, I think it's worth every penny. So again, I'm glad we got some folks, even though it took some extra credit to get you out here. I'm glad you came out to see what's in store. I don't think any of you guys go fishing on Silverbow Creek. You better now, huh? No need to drive all the way down to the big bowl. Any questions?
So, Matt, what percentage cutthroat are those?
That would be a question for our fisheries biologists. I know the ones in German culture.
In terms of
Are they
genetic purity,
population in German
well,
culture?
in the German gulch population would be considered conservation because it has been compromised by a rainbow trout, but there's still a lot of pure fish even in the German gulch drainage. It's about 99% is what we give it, but there's a lot of pure fish. And then Brown's Gulch and Blacktail Creek, we're still all testing pure, so it's definitely 99 plus in the whole drainage.